Hi, my name is Mary, and today we're going to talk about buttonholes. There are many different ways to make a buttonhole in knitting, and I'll go over 4 ways with you today. I've got my little buttonhole bar here with examples of the different techniques: a yarn over buttonhole, a 2-row buttonhole, a 1-row buttonhole, and a vertical short row buttonhole. The first is the yarn over buttonhole. This has you simply making a yarn over eyelet in your work and canceling out the increased stitch from the yarn over with a corresponding decrease. You can make a yarn over buttonhole by working to where you want your buttonhole to sit. So I'm going to go to about the center of the fabric here. Working a yarn over around your needle, and then working a knit 2 together or purl 2 together to stay in pattern to keep the stitch count constant. So here we've made a little hole in our work. This is the smallest buttonhole and is limited to the size of the yarn over. But that's all we've got to do for that. And here's what this yarn over buttonhole looks like in context. There are several variations in the way you can do this kind of buttonhole, but the thing to keep in mind is that you will always want to add a decrease to maintain the stitch count either on the same row or the row after the yarn over. The next is a 2-row buttonhole. For this one, you'll bind off stitches for your buttonhole on one row and then cast them back on the following row. So you'll work to where you want the buttonhole on the right side. And then bind off the number of stitches needed for the width of your button. We'll do 3 stitches here, but this can be done with any number of stitches. So I bind off 1, 2, and 3, and then work to the end of the row. Now, on the next row, we'll work to the gap from the bind off. So now we've reached where we bound off stitches last row. And then we're going to turn the work and use the cabled cast on method to cast on the same number of stitches we just bound off plus 1, so 4 here. So to do the cable cast on, we're going to put our needle in between the first and second stitch on the left needle, pull up a loop as if to knit, and then put that on the left needle. So that was 1 stitch cast on. Now we've got 2, 3, and 4. Then we're going to turn our work back to the wrong side, slip 1 stitch from what is now the left needle to the right needle, and then pass that last cast on stitch over and off the needle. And then we're going to slip that slip stitch back to the left needle and continue working to the end of the row. So you can see the hole that we have opened and then closed. And again, here's what this looks like after more rows have been worked. You don't technically have to do the extra stitch here, but it keeps things neater. A more advanced version of this is the 1-row buttonhole. This has you working the bind off and the cast on all in the same row and can be a little more durable because it also contains some extra reinforcement steps at each edge. So for this, you'll work to where you want the buttonhole on the right side. Then bring the yarn to the front of your work and slip the next stitch on your left needle purlwise. This anchors the working yarn where you'll want it to be when you're casting on the top of your buttonhole. But first, we're going to bind off stitches from the previous row without using the working yarn. by slipping another stitch from the left needle to the right needle and passing the previously slipped stitch over and off the needle. So that's one stitch bound off, and you'll repeat this until you've bound off the number of stitches needed for your buttonhole. Again, we'll do 3. So this is 2 stitches bound off, and then 3. So now you'll notice that our working yarn is left at the beginning of the buttonhole here and is not with us at the end. So we will slip this last stitch from the bind off on the right needle back to the left needle, and then turn the work around to the wrong side, pick up the working yarn, and use that cabled cast on method to cast on the number of stitches we just bound off plus 1 extra. So again, that's 4 here. So here's 1 stitch cast on, 2, 3, and 4. And then we're going to turn our work back to the right side, slip the first stitch from the left needle to the right needle, and pass the last extra stitch we cast on over and off the right needle, and then return that slip stitch to the left needle and resume our work as established. So again, here is the hole that we opened up by binding off and then closed by casting on. So here is what that 1 row buttonhole looks like in the context of the fabric. You can see that it stays a bit tighter than that 2 row buttonhole. The most advanced, but in my opinion most intriguing, is this vertical buttonhole that is formed using short rows used in Jared Flood's The Author cardigan. This allows you to create a vertical buttonhole without breaking your yarn, which is uncommon with vertical buttonholes. You can see this on the pocket, and then these concealed buttonholes on the inside of the front band. This buttonhole is written to be worked over 5 rows on each side, so 10 rows total, but you can adjust it to fit the buttons you're using. You'll start by placing a marker on your needle where you'd like the buttonhole to sit. So I've placed my buttonhole marker already. On the first row, on the right side, you'll work as established to your buttonhole marker. And then just turn your work. Now we're on the wrong side, and we're going to slip the first stitch on what's now our left needle, purlwise with the yarn in front, and then work established to the end of the row. Now we're going to do those 2 rows one more time. So we're going to work to the buttonhole marker. So we're here at the buttonhole marker. We're going to turn the work, slip 1 purlwise with the yarn in front, and then work back to the other end. So we've worked those 2 rows 2 times total on this side for 4 rows from the beginning of the buttonhole. But you can work those more times if you're making a taller one. Now we're going to bridge the gap to build up the other side of the buttonhole by working to the buttonhole marker. Then creating a yarn over on our needle, and then working as established to the end. Then on the wrong side, we will work to 1 stitch before the buttonhole marker. So that's the yarn over that we created just now. So we're going to purl, since I'm working in stockinette. But we're not going to purl the yarn over. And then we're going to turn our work and Slip one purlwise with the yarn in back and work until the end of the row. As with the other side, we're going to repeat those 2 rows one more time. So we're going to work to 1 stitch before the buttonhole marker. Then turn the work. Slip the first stitch on the left needle, purlwise with the yarn in back, and work to the end of the row. So now we've worked 4 rows on this left side only, and that's that pair of rows 2 times. Obviously, if you're altering the length of the buttonhole, you'll want to work at the same number of times on this side as the other side. Then to finish off this buttonhole, we are going to work to 2 stitches before the buttonhole marker now. So that's the yarn over and the stitch that we've been slipping. We're going to purl those 2 together and then work is established to the end of the row. For me, that's purling here. My buttonhole marker fell off. So that just closed the top of the buttonhole and kind of concealed the yarn over we were using as a bridge within the decrease there. As always, here's what that looks like in context. It's nice and clean, just a little slit in the fabric. The first 3 buttonholes, so the eyelet, the 2-row buttonhole, and the 1-row buttonhole, are all easy to work in a sequence on a picked up front band worked horizontally. However, the vertical buttonhole is best worked on a vertical front band since it will take some doing to wrangle everything if you're trying to work more than 1 in a row, though it's not impossible. And there you are, buttonholes 4 ways. Happy knitting!